At the peak of the mountain, the air trembled as if time itself had cracked. A blazing gate appeared in the void, the wind howling around it as if in agony. From within it emerged the dragon, its gigantic wings scattering dust and debris, followed by his 3 disciples, staggering between life and death. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he transformed into the wise old man, his eyes glowing with magic, reflecting the gravity of the moment. He extended his hands over his disciples, and a blue energy began to flow as if pouring light itself into their exhausted bodies. Arian was unconscious due to his severe injury, while Ireniel was completely exhausted, unable to use his internal energy. But something strange was happening. Elena, who had been seriously injured in her battle against Lilith, began to recover at an astonishing rate. The old master watched her with wide eyes and whispered to himself, "This is not ordinary healing ability. It is one of the rare powers from the land of wondrous magic." Suddenly, Ireniel fell to the ground, his body trembling with exhaustion. The old man knew that Arian was between life and death, and that he could perish at any moment. He was not even able to help Ireniel. At that moment, Elena raised her hands, her eyes gleaming with firm determination. She whispered a magic spell, and a circle of burning flames appeared, surrounding their bodies. In a fleeting moment, Arian and Ireniel began to absorb the energy of the flames from Elena. Even the old man could not understand what was happening. That ability was possessed by only one person in history, the Eternal King, the Azure Dragon. Arian's wounds slowly contracted, as if time began to reshape his body. He blinked his eyes, then took a deep breath before his smile slowly widened, blending relief with the weight of secrets. In a calm voice, but carrying solid confidence, he said, "It is over. The sealing spell has succeeded. We have some time, but not much." Ireniel stood up unsteadily, but his eyes were burning like embers under ashes. Without waiting, he stepped forward angrily, his fist clenched tightly. In a low but angry voice, he said, "Arian." He raised his head and his voice suddenly intensified. "Finally you woke up, you traitor." Without hesitation, he waved his hand, summoning his energy, but nothing happened. He looked at his hands in shock, then turned to stare at Arian. His voice was filled with anger and despair. "What have you done? Where is my power?" Arian ignored Ireniel's words and turned his eyes towards Elena. He said, "Elena, I apologize for stabbing you that day, but it was the only way." Elena froze, her eyes gleaming with astonishment, saying in a faint voice, "What do you mean?" Arian sighed and continued, "Lilith was constantly watching me. I had no choice but to act alone and make you think I was a traitor. I needed your blood to activate the sealing spell." Elena stared at him in shock. "What spell are you talking about? And why my blood?" "Arian, the blood sword spell." Arian turned towards Ireniel and said, "Elena, Ireniel, try to summon your swords." Ireniel cast the summoning spell, but the sword did not appear. Likewise, Elena looked at her trembling hands and tried in turn to summon the sword, but it did not appear. "Arian, I used our blood and our swords, the 3 of us, to seal the serpent in that cave. That was our only way to stop Lilith and the serpent," Ireniel exclaimed angrily. "But Lilith is the serpent." Arian shook his head slowly. "No, Lilith is not the serpent. I saw her childhood memories. Inside the cave, Lilith's voice screamed from within the serpent. "That cursed Arian has deceived me. I will kill him." The serpent tried to get out, but it recoiled as if an invisible wall stopped it. The serpent looked around and realized that the spell was stronger than it expected. Impossible. How can this seal be so powerful? The blood sword spell was an extremely powerful spell. It was similar to the dragon magic spell used by the 3 heroes to defeat the serpent thousands of years ago. The serpent realized that its exit from the spell was impossible without external help. The serpent decided to reincarnate Lilith again, as she was the only one who could help it. The serpent cast a magic spell, and the black poison began to gather inside the cave to reincarnate Lilith again. The serpent's voice inside Lilith, "Lilith, answer me." Lilith replied, "Yes, my mistress." The serpent, "You must get out of this place and destroy the 3 swords to break the sealing spell." Lilith obediently, "Yes, mi mistress." Then she whispered a spell to penetrate the barrier easily. But as soon as she came out, she collapsed on the ground, her body trembling with weakness. Lilith on the ground, barely able to stand. "What? What is this? My energy. It is disappearing." The serpent, in a state of shock. "Impossible. Has that king returned? He disappeared thousands of years ago. How can this human possess these abilities? How can he possess this power?" On the other side, on Dragon Mountain, things were still complicated for Ireniel, who had not yet realized what had happened. The old man began to speak. "Arian, what have you done? And how did you know all this?" Arian sighed and looked at the sky. Arian sighed and looked at the sky. He said, "Since the spirit of Kylos awakened within me, I realized that the serpent was inevitably returning and that our strength was not enough to face it again. So I decided to try alone, but I was carrying the serpent's poison within me without knowing it. And in the first confrontation between me and Lilith, I fell under her control. But inside me, I knew the truth that Lilith is the serpent and that I had to fight her. And one day, when Lilith transformed into the image of one of her soldiers, she was very exhausted, to the point that she fell into a deep sleep. That was my chance to kill her. But suddenly, a shadow of poison surrounded her in the form of a serpent. At first, I thought it was a protection spell cast by Lilith to protect herself. After a while, Lilith invaded my mind to strengthen her control over me. In those moments, I sneaked into her mind without her realizing it, and saw her childhood memories. At that moment, I realized that eliminating Lilith would not benefit us and would not end the serpent's threat. On that day, I realized that there must be a way to eliminate them both at the same time. I decided to create a spell to seal them both at the same time as soon as the serpent returned to this land, but I needed powerful magic. So I pretended to obey Lilith's orders and stabbed Elena to take a part of Elena's magical blood. As for Ireniel's blood, it was very easy. Our confrontation inside the cave was enough. After the first injury Ireniel suffered, everything was complete, and only my blood remained for the spell. At that moment, when Lilith stabbed me to cast the resurrection spell, everything was complete. The 3 swords, our blood, and only the appearance of the serpent remained. After we left the cave, the serpent appeared immediately, and at that moment, it was sealed by the spell. Elena, Arian, you are wonderful and intelligent. Ireniel, but you took our swords, and now you say that Lilith is not the serpent? What if Lilith returns and breaks the seal? What if she returns to kill us? She is hundreds of times stronger than us. Arian slowly raised his head, his eyes reflecting a legacy of secrets that no one else understood. In a calm voice, but carrying an undeniable power, he said, "The sealing spell alone was not enough." Everyone froze. Arian continued in a deeper tone. "I knew that the serpent would resort to Lilith to break the seal, so I prepared something else." He took a step closer, as if his words carried an invisible weight. "A double spell. 6 stages of gradual draining. Every time Lilith tries to escape, her energy will be drained until she reaches a point of complete helplessness." He picked up an ancient sword, then ran his fingers over it, his eyes glowing with a dangerous flicker. "This is not just a spell." He looked at Elena and Ireniel directly. It's a trap with no escape. Elena felt a shiver run through her body. For a moment, she couldn't distinguish between the Arian she knew and the person who stood before her now, who seemed to carry a legacy from ancient times. Then suddenly, she stepped towards him, smiled gently, and hugged him. Arian, you were always smarter than we thought. Ireniel is in a state of anger and jealousy. The old man interrupts their joy. But that spell will not last long. Arian replies, yes, my teacher. I knew that. Therefore, when Lilith tries to escape, she will lose her energy. And her energy will be used to enhance the energy of the basic sealing spell. And now, my teacher, we have enough time. But now, my teacher, I want you to speak and answer some questions for me. What is the relationship between Elena and Lilith? Lilith's memory, them together. And why didn't Elena lose her healing abilities? And who is the Eternal King? The old teacher, immediately upon hearing about the Eternal King, entered a state of intense sadness, and tears flowed from his eyes. He looks at the sky, as if memories weigh heavily on him, then whispers, he was. Wait for us in the next chapter. Secrets of the Forgotten Time.